You? A CEO? Come on, babe, be realistic. That's what my wife said the night I shared with her the idea that had been brewing in my notebook for months. I thought she was teasing me, until I saw her pitch it word for word to another man across a candle-lit dinner table, a man she was sleeping with. We'd been married for 10 years, built a life together, shared bills, dreams, and coffee-fueled nights planning our future, or so I thought. I wasn't asking her to invest. I wasn't even asking her to believe in the idea. I just wanted her to believe in me. But instead of supporting me, she laughed at me. And worse, she stole the one thing I had poured myself into. She handed it over like it was hers, like I was just some delusional man-child playing dress-up in entrepreneur dreams. She called me a hobbyist, a side character in her real success story. And then she kissed him, right after telling him my business pitch. I watched from a corner of the rooftop bar, invisible behind potted plants and jazz music. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I just stood there, still, cold, like the ice melting in the untouched glass I'd meant to bring her. They toasted to a future I was never meant to be part of. She had taken my idea, repackaged it with a few buzzwords, and sold it as her own right in front of me. And that's when something inside me changed. No rage, no begging, just clarity. She thought she'd humiliated me. She thought she'd broken me. But what happened next, no one saw coming. We weren't rich, but we were partners. At least, that's what I believed. Back then, our apartment still smelled of late-night takeout and burnt ambition. We had mismatched furniture, second-hand coffee mugs, and a tiny whiteboard on the fridge where we scribbled dreams in erasable ink. She was always the more polished one, MBA. Sharp suits, tight schedules. I was the dreamer, the tinkerer, the one who filled notebooks with wild ideas between freelance gigs and midnight coffees. She liked to joke that I was the heart, and she was the execution. I laughed along. I didn't realize I was the only one laughing. I still remember the night I first shared the concept with her. It wasn't perfect yet, but the bones were there. A niche service platform with real scalability. I'd mapped out the market gap, user flows, even a name that felt clean and disruptive. Her eyes didn't light up. Instead, she blinked slowly, sipped her wine and said, "It's cute, but you're not exactly CEO material." It stung, but I brushed it off, convincing myself she was just tired, stressed, or trying to push me harder. That's what love does. It rationalizes disrespect until it becomes routine. Over the next few weeks, I noticed small changes. She started working late more often. Her phone was always face down. She became oddly curious about the logistics of my project. Not in a supportive way, more like she was extracting information bit by bit. I wanted to believe it was her way of coming around, so I gave more. I showed her mock-ups, wireframes, the beta domain I'd quietly registered. She nodded politely, kissed me on the cheek, and told me to focus on something stable. Then, one afternoon, I came home early with her favorite takeout. The apartment was empty, but her laptop was open. I don't make a habit of snooping, but the screen was glowing, and curiosity overrode courtesy. It was a presentation deck, a clean, glossy pitch titled with my concept name, just slightly tweaked. The slides were almost word for word from my research. At the end, co-founder, visionary, Melissa Hart, my wife. The rest of that day is a blur. I didn't confront her. I didn't even eat the food. I sat in the dark, staring at my own handwriting on her slides. Later that week, she mentioned she'd be out of town for a strategic retreat with a few senior partners from her firm. I nodded, pretending I hadn't already seen her calendar invite to the boutique hotel with his name attached to the reservation. I wasn't just being betrayed. I was being erased. She didn't just doubt my abilities, she appropriated them. She used my silence as permission, my trust as leverage, and my love as cover. But I stayed quiet because deep inside, a storm was forming, and I knew if I played this right, I wouldn't need to scream to be heard. I didn't speak a word about what I saw, not to her, not to anyone. Instead, I started moving differently. At breakfast, I smiled. I asked about her meetings, her strategy retreat, her new passion project. She shared just enough, always vague, always careful. She thought she was playing chess. What she didn't know was that I had started playing a different game altogether. I reopened my old folders. Buried deep on my external drive were the original sketches from nearly 2 years ago. Timestamps, diagrams, voice notes where I'd rambled into my phone late at night, refining the value proposition. I uploaded everything to cloud backups, encrypted and redundant. Then, I visited the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office website, not as a browser, as a man on a mission. For years, I dabbled in legal reading contracts, licensing, intellectual property. It was a hobby I never thought would matter. Now, it was the sharpest tool in my arsenal. I studied trademark law like my future depended on it. Because it did, I registered the brand name, the original, the tweaked version she'd used, and a few others that sounded like potential pivots. I filed for provisional patents where applicable. I timestamped everything, concept notes, process diagrams, branding elements, and stored them with a digital notary. All in my name. All legally airtight. The real beauty? She never noticed. She was too busy grooming her pitch, perfecting her version of my idea. She started coming home with a spring in her step. Her texts were shorter, less affectionate. The distance between us widened, but she didn't seem to mind. One night, she left her iPad unlocked on the counter. A chat window was open messages between her and someone named R. Donovan. From context, he wasn't just an affair partner. He was a potential investor, someone with deep pockets and deeper ego. She was selling him the dream, my dream. I took screenshots. I copied everything to an encrypted drive. That week, I created a separate email under an alias. Then I sent myself an official cease and desist letter, drafted by a lawyer friend who owed me a favor, just in case I'd need to prove prior conflict and notice. Meanwhile, I cleaned up the prototype. It wasn't much, just a rough landing page and a dummy app interface, but it was mine. I pushed it live on a basic domain, with legal footers that referenced my pending trademarks. It wouldn't win investors, but it would win in court. And right now, that was all I needed. I stopped asking her where she was going. I stopped waiting for answers I didn't need. Every time she smirked at her phone or left for a late dinner with the team, I stayed calm. I sharpened my sword, because this wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about ownership. It was about proving that I may not look like a CEO in her eyes, but I damn well knew how to protect what was mine. It all came to a head on a Thursday. She walked through the door, glowing, hair perfect, heels clicking confidently on the hardwood. She was humming. That alone told me something big had happened. I played my role. "How was the pitch?" I asked, handing her a glass of wine. She raised an eyebrow. "How'd you know?" "You mentioned it last week." I lied smoothly. She smiled, smug and careless. "It went better than I expected. They're interested. Very interested." She didn't say who they were, but I knew. R. Donovan, the name from her messages. I'd already looked him up, tech investor, flashy, litigation-prone when things go sideways. I wanted him to come in. I needed him to sign something, because that's when my trap would spring shut. A few days later, I got the notification. Her startup had just filed to incorporate under a name nearly identical to the one I had trademarked. She had submitted a logo, a tagline, and a pre-launch site. It was slick, glossy, and filled with stolen bones. What she didn't know was that the moment it went live, the domain crawlers I'd programmed flagged it and alerted me. It was time. I forwarded everything to my attorney, to the trademark board, and to a copyright enforcement agency I'd already partnered with. But that wasn't the twist. The real twist? I wasn't alone. Remember the friend who helped me draft that cease and desist? He wasn't just a lawyer. He was also general counsel for one of Donovan's rivals, a competitor in the same sector, one who'd recently lost a deal to Donovan because of insider leaks. I'd shown him the entire scheme, the idea theft, the investor seduction, the paper trail. He saw value not just in me, but in the opportunity to publicly burn Donovan. So we made a deal. I'd assign him provisional licensing rights to the original platform, my platform, if he helped me expose what was happening. Suddenly, I wasn't just some freelancer with ideas. I was holding cards powerful enough to make real players move. The next week, Donovan and my wife hosted a soft launch brunch in Palo Alto. She wore white. He gave a speech. Press releases went out, and 24 hours later, they received the legal notice. Trademark infringement, Intellectual property theft, violation of provisional patent terms, immediate cease and desist. The source? Me, filed, documented, and enforced by lawyers they couldn't bully or outspend. Her phone started ringing that night. First Donovan, then their branding consultant. By morning, the launch site had been taken offline. Investors were pulling back. Her LinkedIn went silent. She stormed into our apartment, eyes blazing. "Did you do this?" He didn't flinch. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I protected my work. Something you should have done before stealing it." She screamed, accused me of betrayal. But betrayal requires trust. And that had died long before the trademarks were born. She left that night, but I didn't feel empty. He felt clear. She thought I was just a dreamer, someone who couldn't execute, someone who'd break quietly when discarded. But she was wrong. He didn't need revenge. I just needed proof. And now I had it. Public, permanent, and legally binding. The first headline read, "Tech launch implodes amidst IP theft allegations." Her name wasn't in the title yet, but by the next day, it was. Blogs, forums, even mainstream outlets picked it up. The scandal wasn't just that the idea had been stolen. It was who it had been stolen from. A husband, a creator, the man who had been publicly dismissed as not CEO material, now revealed as the original mind behind the entire venture. Screenshots of her deck next to mine went viral. Side-by-side comparisons, metadata analyses. She was exposed, not just as someone who had stolen, but someone who had mocked and minimized the very person she'd stolen from. The pitch brunch video surfaced complete with Donovan praising her vision and originality. Comment sections exploded. She stole it from her own husband? Damn. You can see it in her face. She knows it's not hers. She tried to weaponize a man's ambition against him, and he just beat her at her own game. Her firm announced an internal investigation, then quietly removed her from the team page. Within a week, she was let go. In pursuit of new opportunities, Donovan tried to pivot, releasing a statement claiming he was misled, but it was too late. His investors had already pulled out. The startup cratered before it could even take flight. And me? I stayed quiet. I didn't give interviews, didn't post victory threads, didn't need to. The truth had done its work. The public saw what I had always known, that some people climb by stepping on others, but eventually, they step too hard and the floor gives way. I passed by her once, months later. She was at a networking event I had been invited to. As a guest speaker, she was in the back, alone. I could see her trying not to look at me. He didn't wave. I didn't gloat. I simply walked to the front of the room, clicked open a slide with the original concept name, Mine, and began to speak. They clapped before I even started. It's been a year. The apartment is quieter now. Not in a lonely way, more like peace settling after a long storm. I rearranged the furniture, repainted the office. I kept the whiteboard though. It still has faded ink from the first time I mapped the idea, out months before she ever touched it. The company's doing well. They're still small, but real. Real traction, real users, real respect. I've built a small team, people who believe in the mission, not just the pitch. We move slow, but with intention. And this time, no one's stealing my voice. People sometimes ask if I ever spoke to her again. He didn't. She reached out once, a short email. No apologies. Just a single line. "I never thought you'd follow through." He didn't reply, because that sentence told me everything. She never saw me. Not really. She saw potential to extract, talent to repackage, but not a man worth standing beside. And that's her loss. I don't hate her. I don't even wish her ill, because the moment I let go of proving myself to her, I started becoming who I was meant to be. Not a version of success in someone else's eyes, not the bitter underdog finally getting his turn. Just me, yet focused, building, living, free. So no, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not the man hiding behind potted plants, holding back tears and shaking with betrayal. I'm the man at the head of the table, speaking calmly, signing deals, owning every inch of my name and everything attached to it. And maybe that's the best revenge of all. Life has a quiet way of revealing who truly values you and who only values what you can offer. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with screaming or slamming doors. It comes with a smile and silence. But strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's choosing not to fight fire with fire. It's protecting what you've built in the dark so that one day, when the light hits, the truth speaks for itself. You don't have to prove yourself to people who've already made the choice not to see you. You don't need revenge to rise. You need clarity, patience, and the courage to keep going quietly, deliberately, on your terms. Because real success isn't about crushing those who doubted you. It's about becoming someone they can no longer touch. And that kind of peace, it speaks louder than any victory ever could. If you were in his shoes, what would you have done? This man was betrayed by the one person who should have believed in him. He didn't yell. He didn't crumble. He simply got smart and got even. Now he's standing on his own 2 feet, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. And that's something truly powerful. Do you think he made the right move by staying silent and letting the truth speak for itself? Should he have confronted her earlier? Or is walking away the real victory here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. What would you say to him right now, 1 year later? What advice would you give him for the next chapter of his life? And if you believe in quiet strength, in justice served with class, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because stories like his, they deserve to be heard.